All right, JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline is where we find Tom Luginbill. It's been a minute since he's been with us. What is up, Lugs? How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks a lot. We will start in Tuscaloosa with the Alabama 8A game. We were just discussing it before you came on with us, that I think every fan went into that game realizing offensive line is a question mark and receiver is a question mark, and you didn't leave the game probably feeling any better about either one of those. I mean, how much can you fix that now between spring and August?
A lot, because I think it's a matter of a single question. Are you struggling, or is it problematic because you have a lack of talent, or is it because you have a lack of experience? Those are two entirely different animals. And the last time I checked, Alabama isn't lacking talent. All right. So now maybe they haven't had as many guys as young impact guys, maybe make that leap as fast as you'd expect, as you'd like, because everybody develops it at a different rate. But I think they're going to be just fine. And you know what I keep pointing to, and I would say this to every fan base, Alabama included. What were we all talking about a year ago at this time? Who was the player that just blew up and we were going, wow, this guy's going to be a difference maker?
Jai Hall, yep.
There you go. So it just goes to show you there is so much that will unfold over the summer months leading into August and obviously into the fall. Spring football is about player development. It's about identifying where your hole's at. It's about getting better. But nobody's playing a game in spring football. So I think I always try to tap the brakes on that a little bit.
You know, most people say Bijan Robinson, Travion Henderson, probably your best running backs coming back in college football this year. When it's all said and done, Jahmyr Gibbs, could he be right there with those guys?
Yeah, I think he's a lot like Josh Jacobs. I think he's very, very similar to Josh. And he's very, very different, especially from a body type from Travion and Bijan. And I had an opportunity to have both of those guys last year during the season. Just phenomenal backs in their own right, but different styles. Jahmyr Gibbs is a much more low-to-the-ground type of kid, can kind of fit through those tight creases, whereas Bijan Robinson and I would say probably Travion, they're a little bit more wide zone type backs that are going to find that crease and go. But I just like the dynamics of ball skills, pass receiving, all of these things that, you know, that Jahmyr Gibbs brings to the table. And I find it interesting because Jahmyr Gibbs is one of those guys in this transfer portal era that looked at this decision to leave Georgia Tech for Alabama as a pure NFL-related business decision. You know, he could have gone on. Everybody knows who he is. Could have finished out his career at Georgia Tech, been very, very prolific. He felt like it wasn't enough. And it just shows you the power of the program at Alabama. If you're affiliated with that program, you played a position that's been very, very successful over Nick Saban's tenure at running back. And I kind of like the reasons why he made it.
Yeah, you know, I'm interested. If you said Georgia national champs last year, you think defense first. If Alabama's to win the national championship this year, wherever it goes, do you think it'll be defined by what we see on the defensive side of the football?
Probably, particularly with the front, in very similar fashion as to what was so impressive about Georgia a year ago, was that front. I mean, look at the NFL draft combine. I mean, I don't think anybody's seen a group like that, maybe ever, as a collective group. And I go so far as to say that while I think Will Anderson may be the best player in college football, regardless of position, I think Travon Walker is the top defensive pass rusher in this year's draft class. I wouldn't go with Aiden Hudson. I wouldn't go with Kayvon Thibodeau. I'd go with that kid from Georgia. I think he's better than all of them. So I do think it's defined by defense. And another note in a spring game, by the way, in the spring game, we're seeing a 2-hour window of what took place over the span of 2.5 to 3 hour practices for 15 days. So we're only seeing a glimpse. And the offensive line may have struggled. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, we can line up about 120 offensive lines in college football that would have done the exact same thing that Alabama's offensive line did against that front.
Yeah. ESPN's Tom Luginbill of the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. That you mentioned that. Everybody knows Will Anderson. We got a heavy dose because of injury to Dallas Turner. Fans love him, rightfully so. Chris Braswell, everybody I think is familiar with him, but all of a sudden here in the 8A game is Jamil Burroughs. You've scouted this guy. He had a couple sacks, and everybody's really excited now because you're going to have to concentrate on those outside guys so much. The inside guys should be able to flourish.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because these inside guys, it's gone from being less of a Terrence Cody, anchor at the point of attack, play two gaps, allow the linebackers to run free, to more of a explosive, sudden, powerful, penetrating type of player at the defensive tackle position. So you're right. On passing downs, maybe previously you'd sit there and say, okay, well, we got to really worry about the edges. Well, now you better start worrying about double teaming the interior as well, because those guys aren't just your normal run stoppers that are going to play on early downs. They're guys that don't have to come off the field. And to me, that just causes all kinds of protection problems, because it's one thing to worry about the edges. It's another thing to have to worry about the A-gaps.
Nick Saban said Jermaine Burton was the, quote, most consistent guy at the position during spring. We really didn't know about Jamison Williams at this time last year, but there's no way Burton's going to be another Jamison Williams, right?
Maybe too early to tell. Obviously, he was a guy that Nick Saban and that staff had valued very, very highly coming out of high school. They knew exactly what they were getting. They knew what he looked like when they had to play against him. And you always hear coaches say that, right? He goes, well, if this guy leaves us, we don't want to have to play against him. Well, I'm sure Kirby Smart's feeling that way right now. And I just think he's more of a complete package. It is so hard, I think, to compare guys to a Jamison Williams that is so unique in his skill set. Because I don't know if there is another guy like that. Now, they're going to have plenty of dudes, Corey Brooks, JoJo Earl, whoever it may be. It kind of goes to the initial statement I made about, questions at a position. Well, does anybody question the team speed on the perimeter at Alabama? Does anybody question the ability level of those guys? We've seen enough of a sample size. You can question what year they're in. All right. You can say, well, it's a redshirt freshman. He's a true sophomore. He's a freshman. Okay. Well, they haven't played a lot. I get it. That's going to happen. It's going to come. But I'm not questioning talent with this group.
Kirby has to say this is Stetson Bennett's team. The players know it's Stetson Bennett's team. I'll be the idiot that asks the question. Is it really? I mean, by week 3, is it really? By week 5, is it really? Is there a scenario where, other than injury, that Stetson Bennett could lose this job after being the toast of the town?
I don't know, man. I got to be honest with you. I think that's the one area. If you were to have a candid, honest conversation with Kirby Smart and their offensive staff, the one area that you could probably say that they have missed on has been the quarterback position as a whole. All right. They took some guys that just aren't good enough. All right. And then J.D. Daniels can't beat out a walk-on in Stetson Bennett. And now they've got these 2 young pups that they've had here recently that haven't played a lick. I think something pretty catastrophic would have to happen, guys, for him not to be the guy. I know that he carries the walk-on label and the game manager label probably heavier than he carries the national championship winner label. And that's unfair. I mean, it just is. I think that somebody's going to have to come out of nowhere and just prove that not only are they better than he is, but they got to play better than he is. And so far that hasn't happened. And they're going to be really, really good around him, as we all know. But to me, the quarterback position of Georgia is I'll believe it when I see it type of scenario, and see if any of those young guys can emerge.
What about the one at LSU? ESPN's Tom Luginbill is headed to Baton Rouge. He's got their spring game coming up this Saturday, and you're familiar. You've seen a lot of Jaden Daniels. Can he win that job, or do you favor him to win that job?
I think that his experience level gives him some advantages, but I also have felt very strongly that he's regressed since his true freshman year. He hasn't gotten any better. Extremely streaky a year ago on what was likely Herm Edwards' most talented roster he's had since he's been there. That was a 9 or 10 game win type of roster, and they didn't do it. And I think a lot of that has been because Jaden Daniels hasn't developed to the point that people expected him to. Now, does he step into a scenario where he's got Garrett Nessmeyer? I still think, guys, barring injury, Miles Brennan's going to be just fine. When Miles Brennan was a starting quarterback, he had played really, really well in those first 3 or 4 games 2 years ago. He goes down, and that's when all of their problems started. So Max Johnson moves off to Texas A&M. You haven't experienced Jaden Daniels, but I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to be one of those guys that's involved in this quarterback battle that they're going to – Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, is going to really, really like him. So there's plenty of options. I think we all know that despite what happened on the field a year ago at LSU, this is a team that needs a image, a character, a chemistry, and a locker room overhaul more so than it needs a talent overhaul. They're going to have talent on that roster.
Hey, Luginbill, this morning I saw Mel Kiper's first mock draft for 2022. Last year at this time, he had Thibodeau number 1. He had Keaton Slovis number 2. Obviously, that didn't work out for Keaton Slovis, who's now at Pittsburgh. I thought Kenny Pickett had an amazing year last year. Any way Slovis can be that good now that Mark Whipple is gone?
I don't know, man. He hasn't played anywhere near as much football. I mean, Kenny Pickett started collecting Social Security by the end of his tenure there. I mean, he was you just don't see much of that. In the old days, that's what those NFL coaches, GMs, and scouts were craving, right? The fifth-year senior that had played a ton of football. You know what you're getting. We don't see that very often. And then he gets the extra COVID year. I think Keaton Slovis is talented, but I think he's had the same issues as Jaden Daniels has. He's been extremely streaky. He has shown an awful lot of flashes. He is not going to be playing in what is as quarterback-friendly of a true air raid scheme is what he was playing under Graham Harrell and Clay Helton at USC. So I think he's going to be asked to do a lot more. I think it's going to be a lot more of a blend of a pro style versus a West Coast type of offense. Am I convinced he's going to win the job? Not yet. But he's probably the front runner, but he's far from being a first round draft choice, in my opinion.
I'm interested in your quick thoughts on the USFL. 3 games with 1 more to go tonight here in Birmingham. Just the quality of play. Take the attendance out of it. A made-for-TV product. What'd you think?
Thought it was a lot of fun. And you guys know me. I've been a part of all of those startup leagues. I've been a part of them as a coach. I've been a part of them as a broadcaster. It was neat to see that. I thought the opening game on opening night was really clean. I think that's what you look for is the football clean? Is it a competitive back-and-forth football game? Thought they did a nice job adopting a lot of what we had incorporated when I say we at ESPN and the XFL in terms of some of the rule shifts that make the game faster, I think make the game better and make it very, very attractive to the viewer, whether you're in the stadium or you're at home. So I was impressed with it. We're going to have the XFL coming around again here in 2023. There's a place for this. And guys, I think there's a place for both leagues. If the more opportunities and more job opportunities there are to develop college football players and develop players that have either been out of the league or made a poor decision to leave college early, the better we are doing for young athletes that are talented enough to play this game. So I enjoyed it. I loved it a lot.
By the way, the XFL coaches, I was pretty impressed. I don't know if Hines Ward will be a good coach. He's a heck of a player. Wade Phillips, Bob Stoops, Rod Woodson, Jim Haslett. It was pretty good list of coaches.
Sure. Yeah, and there's good football players out there, guys. There was, I can remember when we coached in the XFL the first time around, we had guys with Super Bowl rings on our team. I remember in NFL Europe, our 2 quarterbacks were Kurt Warner and Jake Delhomme. So, these guys aren't a bunch of scrubs off the streets. They've been around. They've played a lot of football, and some of them, if they get into the right spot, we'll find a roster somewhere on an NFL roster. That's the point of all of this. And so in the meantime, we all get to enjoy spring football.
All right, he's ESPN's Tom Luginbill. Catch him on the LSU spring game this coming weekend. Luke, safe travels. We always appreciate the time.
You bet, guys. Good catching up.
You too, man. Take care. Luginbill with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.